a blessing. And if it were me, it's funny when you're up there and you almost start talking to your fingers. You're like, why are you messing up in front of all these people? It's almost like the frog who won't sing, And it happens. It happens. Your nerves get in the way, and you just can't do things the way it's never the way it practiced. So anyway, my guys are learning some courage, and I really appreciate you guys supporting them. I really do. Those of you who approve. I always appreciate Aaron. Aaron always encourages the boys when they do stuff, and it's always a blessing. So anyway, all right. So let's look at our fourth message here. We're going to look at a couple passages here, just two. I want us to look at 1 Samuel 27:1, and then I want you to hold your finger there and find 1 Kings 12. All right. And then we're going to read 1 Samuel 27 and then ask a question here. And then, I don't know how far we're going to get into this thing. I'm going to make sure that we get out on time. There's a whole lot of things here. I think it's probably going to end up being a two-part here. But we are learning about self-talk. Oh, speaking of which. Guys, did I bring those sheets in? Did you see any sheets? Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry about that. I have sheets that I want all of you to have here. Harrison, can you look? It looks like that up there. You see the great thinking? Oh, the writing looks like that on the sheet. Do you see anything like that? Okay. All right. I think Wilson's going to go get it. So anyway, sorry about that. I forgot all about that right at the very last minute. I was going to give you some sheets here. That's why it helps to have sermon notes because you remember what you're going to say. All right, so 1 Samuel 27, and we're going to look at verse 1 here. And David said in his heart, I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than that I should speedily escape into the land of the Philistines. And Saul shall despair of me to seek me any more in any coast of Israel. So shall I escape out of his hand. Judd, or Wilson, just forget it, okay, buddy? Just come on in here. I'm sorry. I hate that. I really do. That really bothers me. Huh? Well, I'm wondering if they're back there. I'm wondering if there were Harrisons. Thank you, Wilson. I appreciate that. My poor boys have to keep up with this brain of mine. You see him back there at all?
They're not under those hills on the side.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, no. Nothing. All right, Marianne. All right. Go ahead. All right. Anyway, all right. So here's the question that I want to ask. All right. As far as this passage is concerned here, who can tell me why this was a negative self-talk on David's part? Can somebody tell me what was going on here? David, he said in his heart, I shall now perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than that I should speedily escape into the land of the Philistines, and Saul shall despair of me to seek me any more in any coast of Israel, so shall I escape out of his hand. All right, why is this negative talk?
He's given up on God's plan for him.
What was his plan?
That he would be king.
He would be king. All right, when God says something, does he break his promise? No. All right, so can't find it, huh? Okay. Well, it wasn't God's will. Anyway, we'll probably find it after church, and then I'll just let you take it home with you. Anyway, all right. All right, so here we go. All right, so now it was harmful, it was destructive, and it ultimately would nearly determine what his future was. right? And it all began because of negative self-talk. Now I want us to look at 1 Kings chapter 12, all right? 1 Kings chapter 12, and I want to look at verse 20, all right? Yes, because God had promised David that he would be king. All right, so now, all right, let me go. Of course, okay. I'm sorry. Okay. So let's look at it. All right, verse 20. And it came to pass, when all Israel heard that Jeroboam was come again, that they sent and called him unto the congregation, and made him king over all Israel. There was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. And when Rehoboam was come to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah with the tribe of Benjamin, and 180,000 chosen men, which were warriors, to fight against the house of Israel, to bring the kingdom again to Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. But the word of the Lord came unto Shemaiah, the man of God, saying, Speak unto Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and unto all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the remnant of the people, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Ye shall not go up nor fight against your brethren, the children of Israel. Return every man to his house, for this thing is from me. They hearkened therefore to the word of the Lord, and returned to depart according to the word of the Lord. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in Mount Ephraim, and dwelt therein, and went out from thence, and built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, if you're in the habit of marking your Bible, I want you to underline that "said in his heart" thing, all right? Because that's exactly what David did. David said in his heart, I'm going to perish by the hand of Saul. Can I ask you this question to be fair with David? Did it look like he was going to die? Yeah, it looked like he was going to die. And everything around him was just screaming. You know, this guy's got 3,000 men. You've got a whole bunch of outlaws, men who owe debts and all these other things running with you. There's just, the odds are against you, Dave. You know, let's face it, you're better off in the land of the Philistines. All right, so he said in his heart, I'm going to perish by the hand of Saul. Okay, so notice that Jeroboam said in his heart, Now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. If this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam king of Judah, and they shall kill me, and go again to Rehoboam king of Judah. Whereupon the king took counsel, and made 2 calves of gold, not just one, but 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. I mean, just turned right into Korah and Dathan, and all these guys, Abiram. I mean, just turned into all of them. And verse 29, and he set the one in Bethel, and the other put he in Dan. So, why was this destructive self-talk? I mean, we know that idolatry is bad and all this stuff. Does anybody, if there's anybody who's familiar enough with this story, tell me why this was negative self-talk.
I remember the sister said the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked.
Yes.
You can't know, and that's what he was.
It's deceitful, and it lies against truth, right? Now, I want to ask you this, all right? Does anybody remember why for him, why was it negative? Why was this a bad thing here for him? Can anybody remember the story? Can anybody remember an event that took place before this?
The prophet
Yes. Okay. So the prophet, it's really kind of a weird picture, but the prophet had a new suit on. And he takes the suit off and he goes, Hey, Jeroboam. He rips this brand new suit in half. And then he rips it again. And he rips it again. He rips it into 12 pieces. And he says, I want you to take 10, and I'm going to keep 2. And so Jeroboam was like, okay. So he takes 10 pieces, and he's like, all right, so what's this all about? He said, this is what the Lord's going to do. He's going to take away most of Israel from Rehoboam because they've turned away from me. He said, you're going to be king of 10. He said, now I'm going to leave 2 for David so that there'll always be a light. All right? And here's what he says. All right? I want you to turn to 1 Kings chapter 11 here. Okay? Look at verse 37 in 1 Kings 11. This is 11, not 12. So just a page away. And I will take thee, and thou shalt reign according to all that thy soul desireth, and shalt be king over Israel. This is the word of the Lord. Okay? And it shall be, if thou wilt hearken unto all that I command thee, and will walk in my ways, to do that is right in my sight, to keep my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, that I will be with thee, and build thee a sure house, as I built for David, and will give Israel unto thee. And I will for this afflict the seed of David, but not forever. Okay? So, of course, Solomon sought to kill him. And, Jeroboam ran into a few trials here, but God's promise was sure. He said, if you stay faithful to me, you will have a sure house. And did we not see in the next chapter, Rehoboam arms himself and gets ready to attack Israel, and what happens? God sends that very same prophet and says, you're not going to attack them. Right? Because God said, I gave this to Jeroboam. Of course, Jeroboam says in his heart, things are not looking good. Everything looks bad for Jeroboam at this particular time. He gets to thinking, all right? This is where we start talking to ourselves, all right? We talk to ourselves a whole lot more than you realize. And I'm going to give you a few examples here in just a moment, all right? But we start to talk to ourselves. It's called, let me see here. Rumination. You ever heard of it? Ruminate? We ruminate. One thing, truck drivers struggle with this more than anything. Bonnie, my dad, things like that. There's truckers that I know that they drive in the truck and they think about stuff all day long, because about the only thing they do is drive, and so they get to thinking about things, all right, and it's very hard for them. You really have to look. I'll tell you what, our truckers are heroes. They really are. And if we didn't have our truckers, we'd be in trouble. And the thing about it is these guys don't just struggle with traffic on the streets. All right, they struggle right up here too. And so my dad told me one time he fell asleep at the wheel while he was driving, and he dreamed that he was driving down the highway. That means that there's not a whole lot to think about. There's not a whole lot to do, but really think about things. All right, and so that's one of the things that I have great admiration for Bonnie, because Bonnie, he comes to church and he's faithful to church. He tries to be here when he's able to be here, I like to try and keep him encouraged, because there's a lot of times during the week that he starts, because if he's not careful, he begins to ruminate. I'm just using him as an example. Bonnie, I hope you don't mind if I say that to you, but I know that's something that we need to remember to pray about for Bonnie, and we need to remember to pray for one another. We all struggle with this problem. I'm using a truck driver as an example because those people have the opportunity to think a lot, because they're driving by themselves all day long. We need to remember to pray for people like that. It's kind of like chewing the cud. All right? You ever seen these cows? They just kind of sit around. They're chewing on the cud. All right? That's actually what the meaning of ruminate means. All right? You ever heard that phrase, penny for your thoughts? All right? What does that mean? That means you could be a millionaire with all the thoughts that you think of sometimes. We think of so many things. If we could get a penny for every thought that we had, you'd be surprised how much money you'd make. It's really quite an amazing thing. But we ruminate, we think, and this is what Jeroboam did. Jeroboam got to thinking. He's thinking, okay, God says that I'm going to have a sure house. But boy, we got civil war going on here. We've got issues here. You know, these people are used to sacrificing in Jerusalem. Ooh, that's not good. And he starts thinking over it. He starts chewing on that cud, all right? And he starts thinking, if they go to Jerusalem, they might be swayed to join back with Rehoboam, and they're likely going to kill me. And so he goes to some advisors and he says, guys, what do you think I ought to do? The advisors, I don't know why they gave him the counsel that they gave him. They might have been afraid of him. I don't know what they were thinking, but they said, well, here's what you do. You build 2 calves, and we could get into it. I don't want to waste time talking about this, but he ruminated and thought about these things, and as a result, instead of thinking about what God had told him, he thought about what his heart was telling him, and it got him into all sorts of trouble. And his name literally became Mud. Did you know that Mud is actually a person's name? It's not just Mud. You know, your name is Mud, pal. You ever heard that? There was actually a guy named Mud, and he really got himself into a lot of trouble, and so his name went down through history as Mud. So it's now become a phrase. Your name's Mud, you know, because you're in big trouble, all right? Jeroboam was like that. If you read through the Kings, it says he wasn't like David. He was like Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, that wicked king. All right, I mean, it just goes all throughout history as the name Jeroboam. And whenever people heard the name Jeroboam, they go, a traitor, basically a Benedict Arnold. All right, and as a result of what he had done. So it was all a result of thinking, of his thoughts. All right, so we ruminate. All right, so it's our thoughts. And as we think about these many things that cross our minds, you remember I talked about core beliefs the last time we talked about this. It's been about 2 weeks now. Okay, so it's been a while. But core beliefs, I basically said you have to peel back. The older you are, the bigger the onion. All right, but you have to peel back all of the layers until you get to the core of that onion. The core is where a lot of your systematic thinking was developed when you were younger. And so those core beliefs are what make you who you are. They basically determine your future. And so those core beliefs are what cause the thinking, the thoughts that cross your mind throughout your day while you're cutting the grass, while you're listening to the sermon. Our minds wander. Can I tell you something? You're not weird because your mind wanders. It's a normal thing. Our minds wander. We actually have to get a grip on our minds and say, look, I need you to pay attention, pal. You need to talk to your own self and tell yourself, stay focused, all right? And you have to train yourself to do that, all right? But our thoughts begin to produce beliefs, and sometimes those beliefs are not true. They produce emotions, fears, all right, or peace, depending on what we think about. And then we see the effect, what we decide to do. All right, so now, Harrison, you can show. Okay, just ignore this right here. This is the lost man. All right, but what I need you to focus on is right here in the center. All right, you've got the mind, the emotions, and the will, and it's a wheel that's turning thousands and thousands of times a day, all right? So what happened to Jeroboam is in the green part, all right, Jeroboam's in the green, and he's thinking of all these ideas. He's thinking, boy, if they go to Jerusalem, I'm going to be in trouble. That's like going to enemy territory to worship the God who promised me that I was going to have a sure kingdom. God, that doesn't make sense. I don't know if you've ever thought that way, but I have. I've thought, God, you're confusing. And he got frustrated, which led to the emotions, the yellow part, all right? And those emotions got him going. And then he went to the blue and decided, this is what I'm going to do. And he made 2 golden calves. What happened was he began to get angry. I don't know. I'm going to pretend I'm Jeroboam for just a second. And it's likely, the thing that he decided to do was absolutely crazy. But I think that he began to develop a deep-rooted hatred for God. I think that's what happened. I think that he began to think about these people going back to Jerusalem, about Rehoboam, about Solomon, and I think that he thought to himself, that God, he's just cunning and crafty, and he said that he was going to give me a sure kingdom, but he still expects these people to go over there to Jerusalem, and they're going to kill me as a result. God, you don't make any sense. And so he starts coming up with these faulty ideas about God, and as a result, it develops a hatred. And he says, I don't need God at all. And so he forms not one, but 2 golden calves and says, here are your gods, Israel, right here. And it all was a result of ruminating one day. See, the thing is I want you to just think about where you are right now. All right, mentally. Where were you a year ago? All right, and it could be good, it could be bad. It could be that you're better off, it could be that you're worse off. All right, if you're worse off, I want you to think about where that first began to happen. Can I tell you something? If you actually think hard enough, you can come to a place where you realize where you went wrong. You just have to decide you're going to do it. The brain is an amazing thing. All right, it's an amazing gift that we have from God, but the devil can also use it as well. Ruminating and depression are linked. There's a lot of studies, a lot of people who went through 9/11. They think back on the atrocities of 9/11. The ones who think too much about it end up getting depressed. All right. Same thing with the 1989 earthquake that took place in San Francisco. You remember that? There was a study that was done where these people they began to think about this. There were people who moved on, but then there were others who thought about this earthquake, and it led them to Great Depression. The mind is an amazing thing. If all you think about are your problems, guess what? That's all there's going to be. Because here's where it is, right here. It's all up here, all right? So you can convince yourself, you can talk to yourself, and I know that all that sounds really funny, but the fact is we all talk to ourselves. We all commune with ourselves. I gave you 2 examples. I gave you David, and I gave you Jeroboam. But did you know that it says that about Abraham as well? It says it about Satan. Thou hast said within thy heart, I will be like the Most High. I will ascend my throne up to heaven. All right, you remember that? He said that within his heart. Solomon, I think 2 or 3 times in the book of Ecclesiastes, he said, I said in my heart, I will go and entertain myself and enjoy life, but I found out that this was all vanity. All right? So there was all sorts of examples of people who said things within their heart in the Bible. Okay? So if all you think about are problems, those are the only things available to you mentally. They get in the way of solutions. So here's the thing. If all you can think about, if in your mind you're thinking, I am surrounded with problems, you remember my first message? I talked about mental deposits. You remember I said, make sure that you deposit positive things into your mind as well as negative things, all right? Start making some deposits. What are some solutions? What are some things that I can do? Now look, you can come to me, and sometimes people will come to me and they'll have some great ideas, but it's just something I can't really do. I can't help with them. But keep thinking of ideas. Think of things that are practical, reasonable, that are realistic, and come to me and say, Pastor, I had this idea. I thought maybe I could do this, and I think that we could do this. I think this is feasible. If you could let me do this, I'd like to be able to try to do this to get involved in church. And I'll be all for it as long as I know it can be done. All right. You tell me you want to have this big, huge tent meeting. I'll be like, I don't know if we can do that right now. That's awful big. All right. I'm all for a tent meeting. Don't get me wrong, but let's think about some practical, reasonable things that you can do. Start thinking about solutions. You know your life. You know what you're able to do. You know what you can't do. So think about those things, all right? Make deposits. Find solutions, because that way you can find freedom from it. I used to think that Philippians 4:8 was instructing us to think on these things in order to stay clear of sin. And it does. I mean, it is a good it is a very good passage as far as staying clear from sin. I used to think that that's really what it was, but it's far greater than that. All right, far greater. I want us to turn there. Philippians 4:8, okay? Philippians 4:8. My wife really has helped me out with this. She's brought up this passage so many times, and there's been some trials and some things that have come across her life that have really helped her to analyze some things and have really brought her to some freedom. And as a result, it's helped me. There's been things that recently have happened in my life. I don't know, you've probably noticed that there's been a few changes. You've probably watched me plummet downward, and then you've seen me kind of starting to float upward again. The thing is, there's been some things, and I don't even want to discuss it really. There's just situations, decisions that I've had to make, things that have happened in my life where I've had to rethink everything. And it's all a gift from the Lord, of course. But it's helped me to analyze and consider life in a different perspective. And it's really helping me. And it's helping me so much that I want to share it with you. So let's look at what it says in verse 8. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true. You could probably quote this, right? You could probably quote this, but I'm going to just say it first. Whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Can I tell you something? This passage combats those core beliefs and thought patterns that were developed since your childhood. It fights against it, all right? Let's look at the first one, true, all right? Where do you find things that are true? Come on, Brother R. Scott. The Bible, right. Brother R. Scott's always saying the Bible. And you know what? He's right. That's where you find truth. The Bible is so vital. I love the emphasis. I love the emphasis that Brother R. Scott places on the Bible because it always goes back to the Bible. It's the first thing on the list. Whatsoever things are true. Well, what's true? Pilate's not the only one who asked what is truth. What is true? Have you thought about analyzing everything that you believe in? My wife was asked that question a while back, and it changed her life. Somebody asked her the question. They said, what is truth? And she couldn't answer, and she went home and started focusing. Now, she does know truth, of course. I want to make sure you understand. But the fact is she had to really look and say, what do I believe? And so she began to do some serious research, which led her to get some help from a man that's coming to preach to us this week, all right? It led her to write a book because of this one question. What is true? And I'm going to tell you, it's changed her way of thinking. It's been a buffer against those core beliefs. And you know what? It's affected her husband. In I would say, a marvelous and yet horrible way. The prayers that she's begun to raise for me, the things that she's begun to pray, Lord, I pray that you would help my husband to consider what's true, what he believes. And boy, I'll tell you what, it's been a whirlwind for me because of it. I think I consider the coronavirus, at one time I considered it one of the worst things that's ever happened to me. And now I consider it one of the best. Because of how truth has been analyzed. So whatsoever things are true. What is true? Decide for yourself. Go home and think about it. What do I believe to be true? Think about what you were raised to believe. Bring, colors, thoughts, ideas, pictures that remind you of things. Whatever negativity or positivity comes up, take all of them and analyze and say, is this scriptural? What I believe, is it scriptural? What's your opinion of God? What's your opinion of others? What's your opinion of yourself? Take all of those things and decide what's true. All right? And then whatsoever things are honest. I would say honest with ourselves, I'll be honest with you. I've come to a place. My wife made this for me. She actually sent this to me, and I asked her to print it out for me. I'm going to put it somewhere where I can. I think I'm going to just put it. I'm going to put it right next to that map you gave me, Brother Aaron. But it says this. Listen to this. This is it's called Friday's Good News. All right, it could be any day, of course. But it said Friday's Good News. You can pivot at any moment. Love that. All right. Joy is a choice. His mercy will always whisper, "Come home." Others don't determine your values. You get to determine what takes priority. Refreshment is always available at his well. His strength supersedes any struggle. I love that. Truth always prevails. And number nine just really affected me in a great way. It is never too late to build an intentional life. You know, why am I reading the Bible? How's it going to help me? When I read number 9, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to intentionally find a sermon for Sunday morning. I'm going to intentionally produce I'm not just shooting in the wind when I produce Sunday school lessons, but I intentionally said, okay, what do these people need to learn Sunday? And I'm going to tell you, it took me 2 full days at the library. Those poor librarians were like, what in the world's wrong with that guy? I mean, I was there all day long. And I mean, I was just intent studying. There were times where I'd be looking out the window just like this for about 2 hours, just thinking about what am I going to talk about. And I'm going to tell you, there's been a lot of analysis, and I've been honest with myself. I remember I was looking, and I saw my reflection in the window as I was looking out at the street of Tarboro, and it's like the Lord said to me, Mike, there's nothing wrong with Tarboro. It's what you're giving them. And it's like he said to me, it's like he said, you know, you're thinking that nobody's listening, but have you considered that what you're giving them is maybe not worthy of listening to? What do you believe? And I had to be honest with myself. That's hard. It's hard when you have to admit, boy, you know what? I could be wrong about this. See? Whatsoever things are just. Okay, how about God's opinion? What does he think about what you're doing? It's good for you to say, okay, Lord, this is what I'm going to do today. Here's my agenda. I'm going to do these things right here. Are you okay with that? What do you think about that? Whatsoever things are pure, obviously clean. Look, you know, you can say, well, where does the Bible say that these particular cuss words are really bad? All I can say is the Holy Spirit makes me cringe when I hear them. And I can't stand hearing them on TV. And unfortunately, there's a lot of movies I want to see, and there's a lot of movies I do watch, and I'm going to try my best to... I'm going to say I'm guilty, all right? I watch stuff, and I just get past the stuff that's not really appropriate because I want some entertainment. But I need to be intentional about what I'm watching. See? Whatsoever things are lovely. You know what's interesting about that word? I looked it up, and it actually means friendly towards. I thought, that's interesting. Lovely, friendly towards. And I got to thinking, whatever my thoughts, are my thoughts being friendly to me, or are they tearing me up? Are they coming to me and being good to me, or are they poisoning my mind? Are they toxic, or are they helping? All right, lovely. Good report. What do other people think about it? You know, the thing is I can be doing stuff outside of this pulpit right here, and you not know about it. I got to thinking about, I was talking with, you remember Jesus Carranzo? Yeah? All right. Jesus was asking me, he said, what do you think that means? And I said, well, Jesus, I said, you know, sometimes you told me that you watched this particular movie and this particular movie, but I noticed that you never talk about it on the pulpit. And he goes, oh man, I would never talk about that movie on the pulpit. And I said, that's what good report means. And he goes, it's like the light went on, you know. The thing is if I'm not going to preach on it here, if I'd be ashamed to preach to you and tell you I do it here, I ought not be doing it anywhere else either. Good report. You know, another thing would be like, you know, parental suggestions. All right, sometimes we'll find a movie that I think our kids can watch, and it looks good, it looks clean, it looks like it's pure. But I go and I look at the opinions of others, and I find out what is said, what goes on in that movie, and I go, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. good report. All right? Think on these things. All right, now, I'm never going to finish this. So I'm gonna turn it off in just a second here, okay? But just bear with me, all right? I'm gonna give you a few examples here. Now, I want you to remember, this is not. I do not want you to think about other people when I read some of these, all right? These are just examples. I want to help you to understand what I mean by self-talk. So when I'm talking, don't be tempted to think about your wife, or to think about your children, or to think about somebody. I want you to think about what you might struggle with personally. All right, don't let your self-talk carry you away. Okay, we're talking about self-talk here. Okay, and it's easy to blame the rest of the world. It is. But Jim is a high school teacher, and it says this is his self-talk. There's no point in figuring out what I want since I don't deserve it anyway, and even if I deserve it, I won't get it. That's something he says to himself. All right, does he say it like that out loud? No, but he's thinking it. You know, I'll tell you, I think probably one of the people that I probably share my mind with more than anybody else is my wife. And a lot of that stuff comes out to her, you see. Joanne. Isn't that funny, Jim and Joanne? Anyway, Joanne, a mother of 3. I am going through life with a chip on my shoulder. I'm always angry. All right. Don, a salesperson. Anything I tackle has got to fail. All right, a salesman can easily have that one, right? Gina, a financial analyst. I run everything through a negative filter. Anne, a stay-at-home mom. I always feel guilty no matter what I do. Anybody ever felt? I want you to find which one hits home for you. Okay, I'll tell you that's one that hit home for me. I'll just give you. I'm just being upfront and honest with you here. Sam, a contractor. Nothing ventured, nothing lost. That's my motto. I'm afraid to try for failing. Trent, a music student. What I don't like is me. Mary, a waitress. What's wrong with me? I'm never content. When am I going to be happy? All right, these are examples. These are thoughts, all right? And I don't want you to agree. I don't want you to raise your hand, nod, or anything like that. But did any of these speak to you? All right. Now, I just want you to answer that question to yourself. All right. The way we think determines our actions and ultimately determines our future. It's easier to play the blame game, all right, than it is for us to actually focus on ourselves. I'm hoping that I can find these sheets because, man, I hate it that I can't find those. But anyway, I'm hoping that I can find those sheets and give them to you because in those sheets it basically says it says something about the wife, okay, or my spouse, not just the wife, my spouse. All right, so it could be a husband, it could be a wife, and this is not the only thing. It was only an example. So this is not marriage counseling. This is about self-talk. And I gave the wife and the spousal self-talk as an example. So it could be somebody else. It could be a friend. It could be people that are around you. But it basically says, my spouse should meet my needs. My spouse should make me happy. My spouse should give me what I want. My spouse. All right. Now let me see if I can actually pull that up and actually find that for you here. Okay, yeah. My spouse should make me happy. My spouse should meet all my needs. My spouse should know what my needs are without my having to tell him or her. My spouse should be willing. Should. Remember that word should is a dangerous word. All right. My spouse should be willing to do things according to my way of doing them. My spouse should not respond in an irritable or angry way to me. All right, so do these statements build a marriage or do they create problems? They create problems. All right, they create problems. That's what it's about. It's not about, well, what about the other person? That's what we're tempted to think. But that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is if you want to build your life, if you want to make your life better, if you want to make the situation better, what is your response? What is your self-talk? What should it be? All right? I'll just kind of give you an example here, all right? There's a conversation between Pam and Frank, all right? They're spouses, all right, and they're married. This next conversation is for the purpose of helping you to see the good and the bad of self-talk. This is not about, I don't want you to go, all right, please don't do that. I want you to think about what the response should be. All right, so this is what I'm going to close after this, okay? I'm going to stop, all right? So just hold tight, all right? Just listen intently, and I will be done, okay? So there's a conversation that takes place, and there was a lot of self-talk that happened before this conversation. And I'm going to kind of share the self-talk in just a moment. But first, I want you to hear how this conversation goes. It's 11 a.m. The self-talk started at 7:30. But at 11 a.m., the conversation begins, and it starts with Pam. It's about time you got up. It looks like you're going to waste the entire day. Frank, looking a bit startled. What's with you? I'm just taking my time getting up and enjoying a day off. Pam, that's just it. You're around here so rarely, and half the day is shot. By the time you get dressed and cleaned up, lunch will be over and nothing has been accomplished. Who said I was getting dressed and cleaned up? The only thing I want to accomplish is a cup of coffee, the paper, and the football game on TV. All right? Pam says, what? I don't get a day off. We have a whole list of work to be done here. When are you going to do it? Frank says, I suppose you've been saving up a list of work projects again. Why don't you give me some notice ahead of time? If I wanted to work today, I could go into the shop and get overtime, plus some peace and quiet. Sure, we've had those kinds of conversations before. All right, but here's what, all right, so that was the outward discussion between two people. All right, now we're going to look at Pam. Pam's up at 7:30 in the morning. All right, at 7:30, this is what she says to herself. I hope he gets up pretty soon. I'd like to get started on these projects with the kids away today. We can get a lot done. All right, this sounds pretty positive. 8:15, I don't hear a sound. Well, I'm going to start work in the yard. He'll probably hear me, and then he can join me. 9:15, what time is it? 9:15? I don't believe it. He's sleeping away in the morning. Who does he think he is? How thoughtless. I ought to go in there and wake him up. All right? 10 o'clock. Just because he has no work at the plant or at church, he thinks he's entitled to sack out. What about me? When do I ever get to do this? He ticks me off. He probably knows I want him to take care of those chores he's been putting off. He just wants to ignore them as well as me. My wife's laughing because she's thought these things. I know it. It's confession time. Okay. All right, 10:45. How could he be so insensitive? Look at all I do for him. All right, my wife does it. If she thinks that way, I wouldn't know it. She's sweet to me, all right? I just want to make sure you know that, all right? Do you see how that led to the conversation? All right, that's self-talk, all right? Now, how do we, all right, so your husband's a bum, okay? It's not, right now I'm not saying, husband, this is what you're supposed to do, wife, this is what you're supposed to do. That's marriage, all right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about thinking, all right? So let's stay on subject here, okay? Because I know our self-talk is going to, yeah, what's the matter with you, Bob? All right? But let's look at what might have helped her a little bit, all right? 7:30. I wish he'd get up. I think I'll check and see if he's just resting or sleeping. 8:15. I'm not sure if he's going to get up in time to do much today. I'd better revise my list and then ask him if he could help me with these 2 chores after lunch. 9:15. This is fair, right? Okay. I mean, this is self-talk, all right? 9:15. I'm a bit upset with him, but I have to admit, I didn't tell him I wanted him to work today. Next time I'll talk it over with him before the weekend. 10 o'clock. I could serve him breakfast in bed when he wakes up. When's the last time I did that? Okay, I'm not saying, ladies, you're supposed to serve your husband breakfast in bed. What I'm saying is this is basically self-talk. What could have led to a better conversation between the husband and the wife? And you can apply this to not just husband and wife, but brothers and sisters, all right? You can apply this to work, the people you work with, when even door knocking. Okay? I'll tell you what, there's a lot of self-talk that goes through my mind whenever we have door knocking. Saturdays, there's this, why am I doing this? Nobody's going to answer the door anyway. You get it? And then by the time I have arrived at church, I'm like, let's get this over with. Right? Because of all the self-talk that I did, which was not healthy. All right, so just a few ideas of self-talk that might sound familiar to you. So anyway, I'm going to stop, okay? And we'll pick up on this in 2 weeks. I'll just kind of give a little review of what we talked about, and then we'll kind of move a little bit further. I might even have those sheets for you if I don't find them tonight. But what I want you to do tonight, if I can find those sheets, all right? I want you to answer those questions, or those statements, all right? My spouse should be better to me. My spouse should listen to me. My spouse should do the things I want to do. Those things, all right? I have produced a sheet, if I can find them, all right? I have produced, I have too much self-talk, I lost them. But I produced a sheet, and what it's got those lists, and I want you, if you really want to get some help, I want you to go home, and I want you, there's spaces, there's 5 spaces, and I want you to write down what your self-talk ought to respond to those things on the list. Okay, what should you say? And that'll help you. All right. Remind yourself also to captivate those negative thoughts that come up in your mind. All right. Work out those muscles that you didn't know. I really wanted to go a little bit further with this, but there's muscles that you don't know you're supposed to work out that trainers will show you, and you're like, I didn't even know I had that muscle. And the thing about it is sometimes when you know how the Bible, you know how it says that we're supposed to communicate. I'm going to finish with this, okay? When we communicate, you know how it says communication keeps a marriage going, all right? Communication is what keeps a business going. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Or are you asleep? You ready to go home? Okay. I think you're fried. Okay. What I'm saying is this, all right, instead of the communication with the spouse or the friend or whatever, think about this. Talk to yourself a little bit and decide, is this right thinking? Is this negative thinking? Don't be like Jeroboam. Don't say within your heart, this is the situation and I'm hopeless. Think based on Philippians 4:8, okay? Lord, I thank you for this.